Welcome, everyone. I guess I'm the first one that can actually say good afternoon to everyone across the nation. We're going to go into spring training for tools, tech, and timelines for events. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Chris McDonald, and I'm on the race day team. I'm a race day expert, and I legitimately love helping people manage their event logistics from anywhere from timing to event production and event ownership. And yeah, so if ever you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and I'd gladly have a discussion about how we could help your event. So at this point, we're on event day. So this is the 3 o'clock session. Our agenda for this session goes through the hybrid event day. So your general timeline for your event, then into the technology for your virtual event options, technology for your in-person options, tips and tools for a seamless event day, and then a shared experience. So the event day timeline, in case you haven't figured it out for the past, I don't know, 13 months or so, 13 and a half months, the event day timeline is kind of out the window from what we've experienced. There was a day and a time where you could just step repeat everything that you've been doing for the past, for me, 17 years of putting events on. And now we all are kind of asking ourselves the question, what is an event day anymore? Like what goes into it? What does our timeline look like? What do our timelines out from race day look like? I call those T-minus days. So the pandemic brought this idea of a hybrid event, and with that came the hybrid event day. And that can be one day of in-person events, or multiple days, or even weeks or months of participation. But the one thing that rings true for everyone is that event day is all about creating an experience. So 3 years ago, if you would have asked someone that's in the top 10 races or top 100 races and asked them, why do people come to your event? Almost every single one of them is going to say the event experience. Well, that's not changed. And so the thing that I think race directors have kind of maybe every once in a while lost sight of, especially in the idea of having these virtual events, is the memorable experience still rings true. And so there are event directors out there who are still having enormous success with challenges and with virtual events. And that is because they are creating these type of experiences, and they do run seamlessly. So your timeline for a hybrid event can extend out from what you're used to because of the addition of the virtual event. So again, I call these T-minus days, where you start talking about how much time in advance of your event you have to start doing things, whether it's marketing or orders, or planning with the city, or whatever. And so your virtual event timeline runs concurrently with your in-person event timeline. And they can merge here and there, but the virtual event timeline can really kind of shape what your in-person timeline is in regards to pre-event planning. One of the biggest things is the shipping timeline for that swag. Most virtual events don't have pre-race packet pickup, and so they're shipping things instead. And so if you want everything in hands prior to, let's say, and we have some timelines on the next slide, so I'm kind of jumping ahead, but let's say we're talking about a May 1st to May 30th or 31st event date for your virtual, and maybe a May 15th in person, then you might want to get things to your participants that are doing virtual before the 1st. So now, instead of having to order before packet pickup for your in-person, you're now having to schedule out and project your numbers 2 weeks earlier than you were anticipating. Well, you're also shipping those. Shipping can take 3 to 7 days, depending on how where people are. So again, you're pushing that out, and so those timelines really change because of the virtual event, and it's something you need to take into account when you're planning things out. So don't just go into a hybrid event thinking we're going to do this and we're gonna focus on the in-person like we've always done, and this virtual event is just kind of hanging onto the side. For those of you that have put on virtual events, you know the focus and the resources that you need to put towards that. For those of you that are putting on events in the next 3 or 6 months that still are going to have potential, well, geographically dependent, potentially massive restrictions due to COVID guidelines, you're really going to need to take into account these virtual timelines. So you also need to keep in mind the time to complete the virtual options. A lot of times it's 2 weeks. A number of people are going from the first of the month until a couple days after the in-person event. And then others are saying, on the challenge side, you can take months to do this. And they're still selling registrations throughout that entire time and using the engagement that they have in those challenge events to then show others as, like, oh my gosh, John Smith is already halfway through the 500-mile run. They're posting about that on social media as a way to say, hey, we still have plenty of spots left, or we have 10 spots left, or whatever, to engage more people to register. And then having that grace period for uploading. So don't just end things when the in-person event ends. So if the in-person event ends at 11 a.m. on a Saturday, give those virtual people a few more days to enter things in. And then also going back to the engagement, the photo sharing and the video recaps, just continuing that steady stream of information about the event so that you're continuing to showcase your sponsors or showcase the event or showcase the nonprofit. So the cause is there. And you can use all this later for next year, just pointing back at all the great things that you did in the face of the adversity that you're having to, because you're definitely going to have to jump through additional hurdles this year. And the in-person timeline has changed in regard or because of the virtual timeline, but you're still looking at your pre-race packet pickup timelines, your race day packet pickup. One of the biggest things with the in-person timeline, though, that has changed is your start. And for those of you that have put on in-person races since the pandemic, you can attest to this. There's not many races that are going with mass starts at the moment. So a lot of people are doing open starts or wave starts or more starts with more than 1 days. So all of that has changed. And because of that, the course management side has changed. And so course management is not just, I put a left-hand turn at Main Street. It might be managing the resources that you have out there, whether that be volunteers or water coolers, tables, your signs. It could be your staff. It also could be law enforcement and safety out on course, like EMS. You also have likely noticed that there's some finish line management changes as well, and which also kind of ties into post-race. And that's presently, most events are not holding large post-race functions. You're not having a huge beer garden with a concert, that kind of thing going on. Most of the time, it's a small award ceremony, if there is a live award ceremony. And then from there, you're kind of just getting people back home and not congregating at the event site. So an example timeline of a hybrid event. So, and again, this is just an example, but on April 30th, your virtual swag is shipped. So all pre-registered virtual participant swag packages go out. The remaining packages go on a rolling basis. Maybe it's once per week or what have you. But you do need to make sure if you're doing something like this, you communicate that out. So if that swag is going out on April 30th, keep in mind, if let's say you're giving out t-shirts or hats or whatever else from your sponsors that are going into that bag, that all of that you have before April 30th. So all of those custom orders need to go in weeks prior to that. So May 8th, the virtual race begins. So now you've given yourself 8 days or really 7 days to get all of the gear to the athlete, which is great. And you've had plenty of time within that time period to let the athletes know, hey, your swag is shipped and get ready because everything's about to start and this is how you post your results. Or this is how you participate. So from May 19th to 21st, you have your in-person packet pickup at your local running store or wherever you hold it. And again, during that time period from the 8th to the 19th, you're again communicating. And we're just keep coming back to this communication so that everyone knows where they can go, how they can do it safely, and you now have marketing material in the interim that you can talk to these in-person people about, because your virtual race is actively pulling in data from people out on course. And so on the 22nd at 7 a.m., you have an in-person race kickoff, and you could even live stream that to Facebook Live or on Zoom, onto your website or what have you, for virtual participants, so they can feel some kind of buy-in to the actual event, because some of these people might not geographically be able to make it to your event. It's not that they don't feel safe, it's they registered and they are 300 miles away. And so same goes for the May 22nd at noon, the in-person race conclusion, which might be a virtual award ceremony. And then your May 23rd, so you've given them an additional 36 hours is the last day to submit virtual results. And it's also the last day to enter the photo competition for both in-person and virtual participants. So again, this just gives plenty of time for people to submit everything both virtually and for all of the in-person people to complete the full race experience. So technology for your virtual option. So there's going to be some overlap, but there are differences in technology for virtual versus in-person. And we have goals that are slightly different for the virtual versus the in-person as well. So the goals for the virtual technology are an easier, user-friendly process for reporting results. So again, I talked about making sure you over-communicate how to post results and how to go and participate. So it's very important. Also, inclusive options that celebrate participants at all levels. A great example of this is I worked with a triathlon that went virtual, and it's focused annually on a high percentage of novice female triathletes. It's actually an all women's event, so not a high percentage, it's 100% female. But they focus very specifically on novice athletes. It's a very, very short triathlon. So when they went virtual, they decided, you know what, we're going to allow them to submit results, but we're going to hide the results so that no one can see them. They can see them when they go into their profile, but no one outwardly can see them. And then we're going to make our finisher certificate a certificate of completion. And it's quite literally going to be a certificate of completion with no times, places, or anything. And so it really made it inclusive for those athletes who maybe feel overwhelmed with the idea of going to a real event. And so now that same event has the ability to turn around and market to those people who likely feel empowered to come and participate in a real in-person event. Maybe still at that novice level, but they've given that stepping stone into the real event space. And that goes kind of hand in hand with the instant rewards that mimic the feel of a real race. And you can do that with badges, as well as finisher certificates and live results. So result sets, and let's keep in mind, we are talking about virtual result sets here. So result sets for virtual race are underneath race day tools, virtual challenge results, and configure virtual results. So it is really important to maintain a separate leaderboard for live race and virtual race. And to be honest, I'm fairly certain it is impossible to combine the two unless you downloaded everything, combined it in a CSV, and pushed it back up. So the result set can be a little bit daunting to set up, especially if you have a lot of combined groups and things like that. However, I would strongly advise you to talk to your timer about result setup. So one thing that I think RunSignup's done an amazing job of over the past 13 months is put out a lot of content to different groups on how to survive or how to flourish in virtual event space. And we've put out a lot of content and trained a lot of timers on how to use these tools on the back end. So do yourself a favor, if you're a race director, reach out to your timer, ask them if they're certified. And if they are, they more than likely have been through all training on setting up virtual results and can help you out in a big way. So we talked about setting it up. So what is the athlete, what does the participant see? So they see a very easy result set submission. On your results page, you have this button that says post virtual results. And underneath it, it says submit virtual results. As soon as they click that button, they get this screen over to the right. They can load an activity file from their Garmin or what have you, but at the same time, they have an enter your time function. So They can enter their time, and you can set mins and maxes on this. So if it's a marathon, you can say nobody's entering, under 159 or something like that. And you can set it to 24 hours if you want to for a 5K, for a maximum time. There's also a button just below that says, I finished, but I did not time my run. And that's that, certificate of completion. Those people still show up on the results. They just show up at the bottom, and they show up with no time. And so those leaderboards that I'm talking about, they give the race a bit more of a real race feel. And this is fantastic, especially for a multi-day event, because people can see where they stand in relationship to other folks. And then again, like we talked about, the inclusivity of a finish but didn't time my run. So one of the other things that you can do for these virtual events is digital bibs. Digital bibs can be found underneath Race Day Tools, Bibs, and Customized Digital Bibs. So bib assignment must be turned on for digital bibs to work, and we recommend turning it on before opening registration. I usually suggest turning on auto assignment at time of registration, especially for virtual events, because you're not physically sending people things. You're sending them an email, alerting them to their bib number and giving them a link to this bib. So I also would strongly advise you to go in and mock up a customization for the background. So on this My Big Run example off to the right, what Fleet Feet did is they went in and they made a JPEG of the background. They did not put the bib number on there. They did not put the participant name on there. What they did was, once you do this, you then can click and drag information out of the components here, and you can add that to your digital bib. And these are variable text fields that are pulled from the database. So when, let's say this is me going into my participant profile, and I see, oh, I'm going into the race, I can view my pre-race bib right here. And when I click that, it's gonna have my bib number, which might be like, I don't know, it might be 123, it might be 404. And then my name, Chris McDonald, would show up underneath. So, and when they get to that, they also have the ability to print that out. And one of the best things I've seen during the pandemic is people publishing photos on our photo platform of bibs that they printed out that they received digitally. So it's just a great way for people to engage. You don't have to tell people to print them out. Obviously, there's no timing tag or anything like that associated with it. But it is a great way to give a real race feel to those virtual participants. Another way of doing that is the finisher certificates. We talked about this briefly with that example of the all women's triathlon. So you can set up a simpler or a more simple scenario here under Race Day Tools, Results, and Customized Finisher Certificates. So you can set up an instant customized reward for those finishers. So this example right here for the Run for Missoula is actually one of our just very generic, it's actually template number 1 certificate. So, and you again have those same variable fields that you can move around on the screen, such as time, place, the race name. You can put your event logo that you uploaded under RunSignup on there, the time, and you can also create separate templates for virtual and in-person events. And all of these are linked from the results page. So if they go onto either the virtual or the in-person event and they click on their name, they can see, there's a button there that says finisher certificate because they finished. So if you've turned it on, and you can either use our templates, or again, you can create using your own design where you upload an image and then pull these, and you can change the color of the text and things like that. There's, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 different fonts, I think, that you can use. So it's just a great way to engage people after the race and say, good job, congrats on finishing. So technology for your in-person option. So again, lightly different goals. Our goals for the in-person technology are managing the flow of people on event day and eliminating lines. This is super important, especially in the age of COVID-19. So the other thing that you're very much wanting to do previously, in 2019 or 2018, is communicating your protocols clearly and efficiently. However, those protocols that you had several years ago have changed drastically, and they've changed by region and they've changed by event. And so being able to communicate those now is way more important than it might have been, 18 months ago. And then also ensuring using the technology to meet local safety standards. So one of these is going into ticket groups, and this is specifically for your nonprofit ticketed events. So ticket groups can help you space out your attendees across hours or days because you can put specific caps to limit attendees for any specific time. And so ticket groups can organize time slots, and this can be used for virtual or in-person event. So you can see on this example, on Friday morning, you have different pricing, but you also have different tea times for this pricing on Friday. Whereas Friday afternoon has a set price at $75, and there's only 2 options. And you can put little notes in there about lunch being at 11 or happy hour being at 4. So you could also, another pre-COVID use of this was being able to select what kind of food option or other options that you might have out there. One of the biggest ones is food, vegan, omnivore. So again, for those of you that are race directors and you're like, I've never seen this option, this is part of the nonprofit GiveSignup. And so if you have nonprofits that are interested in this, please reach out. It is something that's very, very effective for like galas or other specific outings that aren't race specific. It is only available to nonprofits. So it's very, very similar setup there to our corral management. And so why use the race day corral management for your in-person race? Well, number one, it syncs with the entire race day suite. So if you're using race director or race day scoring, if you're using our CheckIn app, all of this syncs back and forth. So you can automatically assign these corrals or waves, if you're used to calling it waves. You can automatically assign these by estimated finish time or by a question, or as a question when the person registers. You can also do it manually by CSV, but if you do it by question, you don't have to go back in and do it manually. And so you can also ask, you don't even have to ask what time, you can just allow them to select what time they'd like to start. And you can cap each one of those waves and each one of those groups, and you can have, like only 10 5K and 10 10K in this wave with a total cap of 20 people. So you can limit it in a lot of different ways. And then also on the back end, you can monitor the number of athletes in each corral as people are registering. So it's super helpful. So some use cases are wave or time trial starts. It's a great way, like we just talked about, to manage the limits on people in specific gathering areas. So large events have been doing this for a very, very long time. Usually they've done it by your estimated finish time. And it's partly so that you get the faster people in the front so the slower people aren't run over. Within COVID, it's used a little bit differently in that there might be like a 5 or 10 minute gap in between waves. And it's not so much so that people aren't run over, it's so that you don't have so many people gathered at a specific place at a specific time. And again, different municipalities have different regulations. However, let's say your state or your county might have no more than 50 people gathered in a single spot. And so you say, hey, can we meet with the county commissioners and the health department? We are going to have 10 people on site helping with packet pickup, et cetera. So that brings our number to 40 potential athletes. Can we allow for 40 people to start every 5 minutes? And you might get a yes. We'd like it if it was 10 minutes. Okay, excellent. So we're going to start 40 people every 10 minutes, and we're going to have them spaced out. We'll talk about spacing out in a bit, but this is how you can manage that. So you can set a cap per corral at 40, and you can manage that during the registration process. And it really helps manage expectations well in advance. And this helps with course control, congestion, and supports all social distancing. So you can also use this to expand race dates and apply scheduled corral times for virtual events as well, because we've had people say, well, hey, we're using multiple courses, but we've been asked to not allow X amount of people on a course at any given time, even for virtual. Well, you can request that people apply for scheduled corral times on the virtual events as well. And you can turn on and off, or days, you can turn on and off result set functions by that. So some key features on corrals: there is an easy corral builder tool. You can put as many corrals in there as you'd like. You can have an estimator, or there is an estimator tool that you can use. You can assign the corrals by time, or ask the participant to select a corral when they're registering. or you can do it after registration. So pre-event email. So this is under email marketing and send emails. One of the biggest things here that obviously you guys are using emails in some way, shape, or form to communicate with your athletes. I talk with a lot of people who don't know about this little thing right here, and that is a replacement tag. So replacement tags, if you're using, say, MailChimp or Constant Contact or something like that, you're likely using replacement tags within that. The benefit of using replacement tags in our system is it live links to the database of your athletes. And so you can drop a QR code in and utilize that QR code with the CheckIn app to non-touch scan a participant's phone that they have their registration confirmation email pulled up on, or their pre-race email because you put it back in there. So by using the CheckIn app on your phone or your volunteer's phone, you can easily scan that, pulls up the participant, and you can either use an additional scan to scan a QR code on a bib, or you can manually sign a bib by typing it in, or you can just see that the bib's been pre-assigned. You can also put in race day instructions, which are very, very important right now, with ensuring everyone knows what protocols are going on site, and also what to expect when they get there. The other thing that is not in here, but I'd like to add, is you can personalize it. And I think that really goes a long way with getting people to read things. So in my case, it would say percent first name or percent first underscore name percent. And at the very beginning, and then a comma, and it would say crisp at the top. And then it would, so it feels a little bit more personal, like I'm the one being talked to. And there's replacement tags for if you have bib number assigned in advance, or what event they're doing. All kinds of things can be tagged in there. All those replacement tags are in the same place, that email marketing, send emails, and you can find all the replacement tags there. So we just talked about the CheckIn app. So the CheckIn app has a new and improved version out as of, I think it's a couple weeks ago, maybe a week and a half ago. You'll see you've been used to a blue skin at the top. Now it's green to kind of focus under the race day side of things. Most of the race day tools and things that we have out are green in color. So it's simple, it's easy to use and train volunteers on. Volunteers can use their own device that they're comfortable with, or you can provide devices if you have tablets or whatever. There's new participant management features that make it easier to adjust giveaways, change corrals, and more. And the ticket event check-in app is also available. So again, these are some of the tools that I use on site. If I'm, say, race directing and I've got volunteers or staff out at pack and pickup, let's say I'm at a triathlon, and my lead lifeguard says, hey, about how many people we're going to have going into the water today. I can now pull this up on my phone live, that's syncing with my volunteers or my staff at pack and pickup, and I can say, it looks like right now we have 250 people checked in, and we're still open for another 15 minutes. I'll give you a better number right before the race start. Perfect. So we don't have to count whose bibs are missing or chips or anything like that. And it's, again, super easy to use and super easy to scale up if you do start seeing lines. So how do you use it? Don't go just download the CheckIn app and expect your event to be there if you've not yet gone into RunSignup. So you do need to go into RunSignup, and that is under Go Race Day and Race Day Check-in and CheckIn app. And you will need to turn it on and put in a password and set your dates that it's on, your starting date and your ending date. I tell people it really doesn't matter. I tell people to open it up today. Doesn't matter if your event's in October, and then turn it off, 2 or 3 days after the event. So at that point, you can go in and find your event. And you just use a search, quick dynamic search. You can see how I am very good at making super custom test event names with my crisp bib assignment test here. And so as soon as you get in there, you can go into settings, which if you click this 3 lines at the top, you can go into settings, change all sorts of settings. I actually just did a webinar last week, and we'll provide you with that. Or if you can't find that link, shoot me an email. I'll send it to you on how to use the CheckIn app with all the features and tricks and tips and stuff like that. And once you've got your presets set and you're happy with it, you can then upload those settings to the cloud so you can scale those across other devices. And then you all can go into CheckIn and begin checking in your athletes. So your ticket check-in app, again, this is for your GiveSignup. and it's the same technology team and it's the same platform that Race Day Check-in app was built for. It's available for iOS and Android, just like the Race Day Check-in app. You can scan QR codes or search by ticket holder name or ID. There's also a quick check-in function off of all attendees with tickets from a single purchaser, which is super nice if you have a group that's shown up to your gala. And volunteers, again, can use their own device. So you can see it's a very, very similar platform, but it is a different app than the Race Day Check-in app. So some tips and tools for a seamless event day. The goals for event day are the safety of all participants, employees, volunteers, and supporters. You want to have speedy and efficient processes in place and have modified setups that retain the joy or the fun of a live event, even though we are still limited in what we can do. And then have social connections and interactions between participants and spectators, whether they be on-site or virtual. So staff management and safety. We've pushed this for a long time. I think it's still in place and some great things to remember. One is considering providing no-touch services, or at bare minimum, limit your exposures. And where can you do that? So results go straight to the web or RaceJoy instead of printed pages or results kiosks. You've worked really hard in your event at the starting line and at packet pickup to make sure there's no line, everybody's 6 feet apart, and then you put down a kiosk printer. Well, what are people going to do? They're going to line up. Or you put a big screen up for everybody to see their name. What are they going to do? They're going to congregate. And so for right now, I just really don't think it's a great idea to bring a pinch point back in when you've worked so hard to this point to have a great socially distant race experience. And that goes the same with on course, having self-managed water and aid stations. So this doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have a volunteer out there. There can be volunteers out there, but maybe they're just back maintaining the cleanliness of the area rather than physically handing things out. Having remote timing and ratio of communications. So remote timing doesn't necessarily mean that you're 150 miles away from the event and timing. It's being okay with the timers maybe being in their van or their vehicle, not physically at the race finish, where they can be exposed still to many, many people. Maybe their van is 10 meters away where they can still see everything going on. Most timers at this point have 3G connection and can do this. Not all do, but if they request it, consider this as a viable option. You may, right, even though they've been sitting at the finish line for years, you may not even realize that they've been remote timing, not directly connected into their timing hardware. And RaceJoy is a great way of having that communication out to participants with contactless support. And so you can also adjust the staff schedule to arrive earlier and tear down later. I'm sure when you tell your staff that, they're going to be incredibly stoked to be at the race site, at 4 instead of 4:30, because they don't like to sleep at all. But at the same time, you really do have their best interest at heart. And so most of the time you can set things up so that it's not hours and hours earlier that you have to show up, but it's, a half hour earlier. And your teardown, when you're talking about teardown, your rolling teardown on course doesn't change because there's no one on course at that point. It's more your finish line and your hangout area after the fact teardown, that you're just waiting a little bit longer so that your staff aren't around people as much. So there's also, in terms of a tool that you can use to help with all this, there's a free volunteer management tool on the back end of RunSignup. It's flexible for all event sizes. The volunteers see their assignments in the GiveSignup RunSignup profile. And it's flexible for organizations with minimums and maximums. So you can set different volunteer needs and accesses per those needs. So you can set volunteer categories, which is like a set categories of, say, water stations. And then you can set tasks, like I'm going to be at water stop 1, you're going to be at water stop 2, and then you can have time slots. So time slots might not be applicable to all events. It's maybe an 8 to 10, and that's all there is. But for longer events, whether it be like half iron distance triathlons or marathons or things like that, where you kind of pass the baton halfway through, you can set an overlapping time slot so that there's always someone at your volunteer station. And then you can also set access and management, whether it be a category coordinator or a task coordinator. And those are the people that have access to see who is actually in the volunteer categories or specific task, depending on what their access is. So what does it look like and what does it do? This is what it looks like on the right to the person signing up to volunteer. This volunteer tab goes onto your RunSignup page so people can click in and volunteer for specific times and tasks. But it collects volunteer registrations. You can import these people in as well. You can also collect custom data through questions, and you can set your advanced volunteer positions to be password protected so that you don't give someone access to other people's contact that you don't want to. And you can allow volunteers to leave comments. And there's also a built-in email tool so you can communicate directly with people by task or by time slot or whatever. You can parse that out as needed. So there's also pretty awesome reporting on the back end. So your summary report gives you a summary of all tasks and if the minimum and maximums have been met. So this first image gives you a breakdown there. And so what that is say water stop 1. You can see that the volunteers have 2 of 2 people. And it's not 2+, it's just 2 of 2. We only want 2 people there maximum. And it's full, it's green, really easy to see that. Whereas water stop 2, you need 1 or more. So it says very, very clearly, you need more volunteers. So that there's uncategorized tasks as well, such as cash collection. You can see it says more than 1. And so that's yellow, the minimum's been reached. The other 2 need 5, and it's not been reached. So you also have a volunteer report, and that allows you to view volunteers per task and manage your volunteers. So you can scroll through that. It looks very, very similar to a participant list, but it's under the volunteers section. So packet pickup. Packet pickup has changed significantly over the past 13 or 14 months. You do need to plan for social distancing, and you need to communicate that plan in advance. So you need to spread out stations if you're going to have more than one. So not have them side to side, shoulder to shoulder, spread them out 10, 15 feet if you're going to be outside if possible. And have a plan to manage and limit crowds and enforce the social distancing. Don't just say it and then let people stand shoulder to shoulder. Actively have someone there that is going to enforce this. Because the last thing you want is for the health department to show up to your first event just as a courtesy and see that you're not following any of the protocols that you said you would. So this could be text alert, signage. Some people have used FM radios. You can have dots or tapes on the ground, whatever you need to do to show safe distances. And this specific example has plexiglass and masks mandated. So do whatever you need to do to keep your athletes and your staff safe. So with packet pickup, you could consider doing packet pickup for bibs only. We've talked about this before in other sessions. As part of the start line shoot, and dynamically assign the bib, and then they start. So I'll play this while I'm talking, but really quickly you can see that they go in, check in, and as soon as they pick up their bib, they go. So the sure giveaway is there at the finish. And so this avoids participants going back and forth to their car, and so it's easier for participant management. And you can use the CheckIn app for efficiency on this by using the QR code for scanning of bibs and having a barcode or a QR code applied to the bibs. And you can ensure that the settings are uploaded to the cloud. This way you can, if you see lines forming like we talked about, you can then scale out very, very easily. So start line options. So we just talked about one. There's a number of different ways to do things. So you can have a mass start where everybody starts at once. Pros to this, everything feels normal. Everybody's on course, it's fast. The cons are COVID-19 is still a thing, guys. Like let's get the industry up and running. I think very few events are doing mass starts right now, and I think that's a very, very good idea to hold off on this. So then you have a limited wave starts or corrals. And for example, 10 athletes every 2 minutes. So the pros here, athletes feel like they're racing, but they're still only 10 at a time. And it could get confusing if you don't communicate appropriately. So time trial starts, one athlete starts every 10 seconds. So the pro here is athletes are as spread out as they could be, so there's less contact. The con, the start takes longer, it feels less of a race against others and more of a race against the clock. However, if you have athletes that have been racing like pool swim triathlons or time trial bikes, they're super used to this, so it's not that big of a change for them. And so you also have a grid start. And this can be in conjunction with wave starts. Most of the uses here, I think it has been used with corral starts. So everybody in that corral starts at once. However, you have dots on the ground that are spaced out 6 feet apart. And the dots, cones, flags, whatever it is, but they're spaced out. So you're loading everyone in. And maybe it takes 3 or 4 minutes to load everybody into a dot. And then you say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. So everybody's through fairly quickly. The con here is you need to speak with your timer because you're going to have to time off of chip time. In wave starts and time trial, you can potentially not time off of chip time as long as everybody starts when they're supposed to, even though I would strongly advise you to time off of chip time. But you need very much, if you're going to do a grid start with waves, you do need to speak with your timer. The open start finish is like a 2-hour window for people to start and finish. The pro here is athletes can start whenever they feel like it. The cons, and I've personally experienced this, groups are still going to choose to run together. And so you're going to have to ask them to space out. Now, once they get on course, it's going to be really hard to police that. But people are going to show up, if they have a family of 15, they're going to show up and run 15 together more than likely. This is another scenario where you're going to need to time off of chip time. So again, if you're going to do this, speak with your timer in advance. And then there's the multi-day event, which is we're going to start from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. for multiple days in a row. The pro here is there's plenty of time for athletes to spread themselves out. The con, you're going to be out there for a very long time, like a very, very long time. And that you can start having issues with your resources, whether it be generators running for a certain amount of time or the volunteer hours that you have allotted to the event. So here's some examples of some start lines. These are a cone set out in matrix that are 6 feet apart at minimum. And then they run across a start mat. So there's a start mat up here. So same kind of thing. There's little orange dots along the ground with start mats, flags in a field to line people up on. So all of these can be used to help out, spread the course out. So course considerations. For a road course, you do have to consider like the last finisher of the last wave has enough time prior to the course opening to traffic. For those of you that are just now coming back into these races, keep in mind that your police might be used to, 65 minutes after the race starts, they're done. But if you're clicking off waves every 10 minutes, you need to remind them that 65-minute timeline is from the start of the last wave. So many events are moving to off-road or to paved trail to allow for a longer participation period. And if you are doing that, you need to consider how much light will be on the course if planning to do things before or after sundown. Lots of athletes don't feel safe running in the dark. So for instance, the picture on the right, beautiful trail. Oh my gosh, would love to go run on that. However, the sun's not going to come up on that trail for maybe 30 or 40 minutes after the sun actually comes up due to tree cover. So you need to consider these things when you're finding courses that you're going to leave open for long periods of time. However, because you're spreading things out, if you have 1,000-person event normally, and you have 1,000 people registered and you have 3 days to race, everybody's not showing up at the same time. So parking could be easier. You could have places to go and venues to use that were not available because you can't park 1,000 people. Well, now you can because you're not going to have that many people all at once show up. So in terms of the actual course itself, out and back courses do reduce the resources, which are helpful if you don't have as much equipment or staff. But loop courses provide the most socially distant race experience. So just keep that in mind. If you have a 100-person event, out and back might not be that big of a deal. If you have a 1,000-person event, it could become a very big deal. So just keep that in mind when you're building out your courses. So a safe finish line. What should every single finish line look like during the pandemic? It should look just like a normal race without the people. So use your finish line structure, fun signs, photos, announcers, music, have that celebration atmosphere, but just without the post-race party. For the results, you're texting an email notifying them of their results. You're sending out the finisher certificate to the athletes, but you're limiting those kiosks and scrolling results TVs for now. And if you are having an on-site award ceremony, consider a PDF awards list from your timer. So they could just email that to you and you could pull it up on your phone or your tablet rather than passing papers back and forth. So different finish line options. For in-person finish lines, there's really two main options. That's a separate start finish and a shared start finish. And which type is kind of determined by several factors: your event distance, size, how much, what your resources are, whether it be staff or volunteers, and equipment. So you do have to take into account when you start the race and how many people are going to be on course. So there's several scenarios that you need to think about when thinking about the congestion out there. So longer distance events like halves and fulls, you can have a shared start finish. It's not going to be a problem, more than likely, because all starters are going to be on course before the first finisher gets back. For shorter events with smaller fields, again, shared start finish, probably not an issue because everyone will have started before anybody gets back. However, shorter events with a lot of people, you have to start doing the math and consider having a separate finish line. When I say separate, I don't mean like a mile away. It could be 20 yards away, but consider having a separate one. So you need to consider when your first finisher in a 5K, I mean, some of you might have 14-minute finishers. Most of the time it's fastest person is 15 to 16 minutes. You know, plenty of events are out there that are non-competitive that have, 20, 22-minute first finishers. But if that's the case, and you're starting waves of say 20 every 3 minutes, the moment you have over 100 registrants, you're now going to have people starting and finishing at the same time. And you can't just start that last wave at the same time you expect the first finisher, even if you have a turn like 100, 200 yards into the course, because now you're going to have 20 people turning that blind turn the same time your first finisher, who's coming in hot, is coming around that corner. So you really have to think about what your course layout is and what it's going to look like at that start finish line. So we have different start finish line options. Again, in each one of these pictures, you don't see people along the side. You don't really see timers along the side. You might see equipment, but you don't see people gathered. And that's super important. So, and I've been adding in this Ironman picture to kind of drive the point home. For those of you that have been to an iron distance event, usually, the crowds are, especially for the winter, it's crowded as all get out, like people are banging on the signs and cheering and taking pictures. In this image, there are no crowds along the side. And the staff are wearing masks. So again, all of these are kind of drive the point home. Like right now might not be the best time to bring back your post-race party. We're still coming out of the pandemic. So how to have a shared experience. So one is setting up an enhanced race day experience with RaceJoy. So you can have live tracking on a participant's phone with audio progress updates every mile, remote cheers and sending by spectators, and custom audio race experience by adding in specific things that you want out there on course, and you can automatically submit progress and results. So it's just, in general, real-time remote social engagement. I think a lot of you have used it before for virtual, but you can also use it for your in-person at the same time. So RaceJoy for hybrid events. For your in-person, you have this on-course map customization option. So just keep in mind, RaceJoy in person is not going to submit results for you. So it's not taking the place of your timer. But it will allow options to catch backup data for like splits and things like that. So your timer can go back in and look at that split data to see if somebody cut the course or something like that. So it's a great remote timing tool for you to have. So for virtual, you do have that automatic result submission, and you have both RaceJoy on course and or race anywhere options. So I think most of you have used those options over the past 13 months. So as you're coming back, consider using it for your in-person event as well. And it integrates the automatic results and performance data into the experience. So for both, you have the custom audio experience. For on course, you have the physically on the course where those audio things are happening. For Race Anywhere, it's by distance. You can brand this race experience in both scenarios and upsell that to your sponsors. And it just really does allow for a safe real-time engagement with participants and spectators. So you also have shared photos. So under photos and photo setup, you can upload professional photos from your in-person event, and you can enable and encourage participants to upload photos for a shared race day for your virtual and your in-person. And you can also put in watermarks so that athletes, every time they go back and look, they're either getting a sponsor image or your image of your event. So this is what the back end looks like. And this is what the front end looks like. So you have automatic bib tagging. You can also crowdsource for additional tagging results. This integrates in with the results similar to the results certificate. So as soon as somebody clicks on their name on the results, it gives a link to their finisher certificate and their photos. And so you can see photos that have been tagged to their bib number. We do suggest using a 4-digit bib number as it tags best with 4 digits. And then also with the team side, you have team photos, and this is where some team members are virtual, some are in person, and so these can be grouped together. And with this, you can set up contests and awards. So you can use social media to highlight a range of supporters. And you can do that whether it be top fundraisers, photos, costume, refers, largest team, and t-shirt design, and promote a hashtag. So even in this example, you can see people that have raced virtually, people with bibs on that raced in person, all of that, and they're using their hashtag RumpShaker5K. So I think I went over by about 2 minutes, but I appreciate everybody sticking with me. And are there any questions that we need to go over before in 8 minutes we jump over to our panel discussions?
I think we are pretty good on this one. I know you have to jump out to get to your panel, so we can let you go. But thanks, Chris.